So what? He's implying that he didn't just learn that? Well, why'd you say it as a defense in the first place? Why'd you say it? Because he is a liar. Why are the people representing Trump liars? Why do they feel the need to lie? He just acknowledged that he knew that little bit about the Presidential Records Act. It was a bad argument either way. It was either bad because he was being dishonest, or it was bad because he wasn't educated enough to talk about it. And he didn't really understand it. Well, it turns out, yeah, he really did understand it. So he says, okay, I acknowledge that, moving on. You're telling me, why'd you make the case? Why'd you make the argument in the first place? That should tell you, if you're wondering, am I on the right side? Am I on the wrong side? That should be a strong hint right there. The dude arguing for Trump knowingly lied just now in this interview. So Chuck Todd just did a fantastic interview wherein he grilled an attorney coming to Trump's defense on just the obvious criminality that Trump was showing in the obstruction case with the documents. Let's have a look at this guy being, the guy Todd is interviewing, being utterly unable to answer any questions in a way that makes Trump look good. It's beautiful. It was embarrassing for Trump's side, which means it just about made my day. Plus, I need the palate cleanser.
Turning now to the unprecedented scene that played out in New York City on Tuesday as Donald Trump became the first former president charged with a crime. 34 felony counts of falsifying business records stemming from alleged hush money payoffs he made to adult film star Stormy Daniels at the time that it's alleged to avoid a scandal ahead of the 2016 election. Trump's route to the courthouse to be fingerprinted and arraigned was tracked in an OJ-like style overhead that you might expect from the New York City media and on the ground. He pleaded not guilty, but it is just the first chapter of what's likely to be a very busy spring of legal developments. You have the civil trial for battery and defamation. That begins in just over 2 weeks in one of two cases New York author E. Jean Carroll has brought against the former president.
Just to be clear, that battery he's referring to is rape. E. Jean Carroll says Trump is a rapist, and that's what she intends to prove in court.
There's the criminal case in Georgia that's focused on the former president's efforts to overturn his 2020 election defeat there. And then, of course, there's the special counsel probe into the former president's potential mishandling of classified documents, where the special counsel Jack Smith is looking into possible obstruction. The former president addressed that probe at Mar-a-Lago on Tuesday night.
You have a radical left lunatic known as a bomb thrower who is harassing hundreds of my people day after day over the boxes hoax. You know, the boxes hoax, as we call it. They like to say that I'm obstructing, which I'm not, because I was working with NARA very nicely until the raid on my home.
Joining me now is James Trusty. He is one of the former president's attorneys in the classified documents case.
And he is about to be deeply embarrassed. Ooh, boy.
Mr. Trusty, welcome to the press.
Morning.
Thank you for giving me a few minutes. I want to start with that Washington Post report this week. Let me read an excerpt from it. That there's they believe the special counsel is looking at obstruction of justice as a crime in this situation. Investigators now suspect, based on witness statements, security camera footage, and other documentary evidence, that boxes including classified material were removed from a Mar-a-Lago storage area after the subpoena was served, and that Trump personally examined at least some of those boxes. What's your client's response to this assertion?
Yeah, well, that it's nonsense. I mean, look, there's been a campaign of leaks from DOJ, unlike anything I've ever seen. I was a prosecutor for 27 years. I spent 17 at this Department of Justice. I don't recognize it anymore. They are consistently leaking. The angle they're pushing on the obstruction is to try to create some sort of daylight.
Just to be clear, the information we've heard about this largely has come from Donald Trump himself. And the story about leaks has also come from Donald Trump himself. This guy has been, if you're MAGA, listen to me closely now. Come here. If you're MAGA, Trump is the only reason we even know about the documents case at all. He could have said nothing, and there wouldn't have been nothing. In fact, by all accounts, it looks like Merrick Garland would have just let him get away with it, because that's who our weak-ass attorney general is. Trump is the reason people even know about the documents case. He might be the reason there even is a documents case, because when the FBI raided his home, it was just to give the documents that he refused to give back. The FBI raided his home. It was to physically take back documents that were not his to keep. Now you know.
Between Joe Biden's possession of documents and President Trump's. And it's not going to work.
Get him, Chuck.
They have literally put in everybody to grand jury you could imagine. They don't respect any privilege that President Trump holds. And it's desperately trying to find an obstruction angle that just isn't there.
Former president himself, though, basically admitted to the crime. This is what he said to Sean Hannity.
I can't imagine you ever saying, bring me some of the boxes that we brought back from the White House. I'd like to look at them. Did you ever do that?
I would have the right to do that. There's nothing wrong with it.
But I know you. I don't think you would do it.
Well, I don't have a lot of time, but I would have the right to do that. I would do that. There'd be nothing
wrong.
Let
me move on.
Delighted. Ooh, delighted that they Todd came with the clips.
The law does he have a right to these classified documents? Presidential Record Act is
Watch this guy
clear.
flail.
There's no vagary here.
No, well, you're right, but I think you're misinterpreting the Presidential Records Act. You notice he didn't say, I did this, I possessed it. He said, I would have the right. He's correct. Under the Presidential Records Act, which is a non-criminal statute, that's the key. DOJ and political bureaucrats at NARA criminalized something using criminal tools, grand jury subpoenas, search warrants, for a statute that says, look,
Just for the record, no, he's not right.
Presidents work with NARA, work with them for years, figure out what stuff they get. It took 18 years, I think, for Nixon's tapes to finally get to NARA. So there.
Presidential Records Act was created because of that incident with Richard Nixon. So this guy is being dishonest, and all it would take is a journalist to have done a little bit of homework in order to disprove him. And guess what Chuck Todd did?
There's a delay built into the process as they negotiate in good faith. In this case, NARA was hypersensitive, immediately trying to pounce on President Trump to say he's holding on to things he's not entitled to. But the remedy for all of that, if you have that fight between the archivist and the former president, is civil litigation. Okay. And they jumped right past that with a very happy and willing DOJ.
Well, you say that, but they actually spent over 18 months before asking for a subpoena. He signed, he had a lawyer sign that he had returned all classified documents. So the problem is he actively misled NARA, so it forced a situation where they didn't know where else to turn other than the law. I mean, he himself lied via a lawyer, which has gotten that lawyer in trouble.
Well, you're putting together a whole bunch of hoops that don't actually connect. Look, NARA had 15 boxes given to them in January of 2022. 15 boxes, just here it is, take it, use these for archives. I've looked through those records, those documents, and you have a process. This is what every other president in history has gone through, is a process of communicating and resolving issues as to what stuff he wants to keep and what stuff he wants to give over.
None of it belongs to him. He has this mistaken a feeling that anything, none of it belongs to him. It belongs to the presidency.
Read the Personal Records Act, the Presidential Records Act. There is the ability of any president to deem things as personal, to say, I'm going to keep these as personal.
Sure.
If NARA disagrees, they can sue in D.C. That's not what happened.
I understand that, but he seems to, and you seem to be, I think, maybe unintentionally misrepresenting the law when you talk about Nixon.
All right, so he's going back to the Nixon thing. No, not unintentionally. Don't give him that credit. But let's go to the other thing. Trump gave back 15 boxes, he said. Trump gave back some, not all. How about this? If Trump wanted to disagree with what the government could and couldn't have, how about you give them all back, everything they were requesting, and then, if you want, you work with them to see what they'll give to you. private citizen who's not the president anymore. How about that?
The law was passed after Nixon. Nixon had a case because the law wasn't in place. The law was effective with the Reagan presidency in 1981. Does Donald Trump think he should get paid?
Boom.
Is that what's going on here? Because
Homework
Nixon
done.
got paid $18 million. Is he just holding these documents for some sort of financial settlement?
Nah, that's a cheap shot. Look, if you,
he keeps bringing up this Nixon thing. What other?
Every shot they will say is cheap. Republicans are like soccer players that flop over when somebody runs within 15 yards of them. They don't know even, frankly, how to play the game. They only know how to call for penalties. That's it. Pathetic.
Okay, so let's go more modern day, because you're right about the timing of the Presidential Records Act. Bill Clinton.
He acknowledges that. So what? He's implying that he didn't just learn that? Well, why'd you say it as a defense in the first place? Why'd you say it? Because he is a liar. Why are the people representing Trump liars? Why do they feel the need to lie? He just acknowledged that he knew that little bit about the Presidential Records Act. It was a bad argument either way. It was either bad because he was being dishonest, or it was bad because he wasn't educated enough to talk about it. And he didn't really understand it. Well, it turns out, he really did understand it. So he says, okay, I acknowledge that, moving on. You're telling me, why'd you make the case? Why'd you make the argument in the first place? That should tell you, if you're wondering, am I on the right side? Am I on the wrong side? That should be a strong hint right there. The dude arguing for Trump knowingly lied just now in this interview. And he's trying to just skate past that. Of course, Chuck Todd will let him. Chuck Todd still is about as scary as a snarling puppy. But still, good work there. And this guy ought to be ashamed.
Had multiple recordings he kept in a sock drawer of his presidency while in the Oval Office, talking to foreign leaders, talking to advisors. He basically said, hey, that stays in my sock drawer. It's personal. NARA didn't blink. Obama Foundation had millions of documents in a former, I think, furniture store out in Illinois. Arguable whether it was ever really truly secured. They acknowledged that they had classified documents, probably to the tune of thousands. And there was never any blink by NARA. They, in fact, said, we're going to give NARA $3.3 million to help move these documents back eventually when we have a digitized library. That's never happened. Now, the payments may have happened, but that's never happened. NARA was perfectly comfortable accepting money for a move that won't happen for thousands of classified documents in some place near a McDonald's in Illinois, and never blinked. Never any criminal tools, never any criminal referrals. So, look, this has a rotten underpinning in terms of bureaucrats being politicized, followed up by an all-too-eager DOJ to criminalize something that's not a crime. That was the point of the president's comment.
He has done with classified documents what no former president has ever done. I mean, you keep trying to say all of those situations you represent, there was actual cooperation by those former presidents to deal with the dispute. In this case, not only is he not cooperating, he is actively not cooperating. And again, he did not comply with a subpoena. That's the end of the day. That's the obstruction charge. Why didn't he comply with the subpoena? There was a subpoena for all classified documents. He did not comply with the subpoena. He was caught not complying with the subpoena because of the search warrant ended up turning up more classified documents. How do you explain him defying a subpoena?
Chuck.
Fantastic questions from Chuck Todd. He is angling for a nickname on this channel. Suggestions in the comments, please. I like Hey Manker Hank. I like, Hurtin' Bomb Henrietta. I don't know. But, yeah, he's angling for a nickname. That's a great question. Let's watch this guy struggle.
The Democratic narrative, which you're touting right now to try to draw a distinction.
It's just a set of facts.
Well, let me finish.
Why call it a Democratic narrative? It's a set of facts.
Because you're...
Same thing. The Democratic narrative will always be, so long as lefties are in charge of the Democratic Party, the facts. So they're both right here. That is a Democratic narrative. Reality is a Democratic narrative.
You're ignoring a set of facts. Let's talk about Delaware. You've got a vice president that has documents for decades in this Chinese-funded Penn Biden Center, right? You've got absolute obstruction there because we don't even have any sort of...
How's that obstruction?
Because he had no right to have those documents.
Right, and
he didn't have any.
And did he refuse to turn them over when he found them?
Well, I don't know. It was hidden for so many months.
Again, did he turn them over?
Did his lawyers turn that over without any sense of chain of custody or any sorts of
Has the former president turned this over?
Well, we
subpoena?
We don't have the leaks coming from Rob Hur's investigation to know the details of exactly how stuff was turned over.
So is your defense that hey, we think other people broke the law, so let us break the law?
No, of course not. I
mean, I just think that doesn't seem to be a good defense.
Chuck, the point of it is...
Oh, he's knocking him around. He's mauling him. This guy isn't just against the ropes. He's cowering against the post. Good Lord. I mean, look, I don't think this speaks to this guy's skill as a lawyer. Not at all. Well, what's the old lawyer saying? Don't try to defend an intangible case, an undefendable case, in other words. Don't try to defend it, because you'll look like a fool, because it's foolish to do that. Unfortunately for this guy, Trump said, go represent me on TV. I imagine the guy got stars in his eyes and scrambled to the set. But defending Trump on TV means making an ass of yourself, which is what is happening, and this guy deserves it. Get him, Chuck.
It's not to say that somebody else broke the law and we did too, it's okay. It's to point out that the common denominator, whether you're talking about New York, Georgia, or DOJ, is differential treatment for President Trump than anybody in history. And to sit there and whitewash Delaware and to wonder aloud about 1,800 boxes that are in the Delaware University that Biden put there. I mean, we are shut out from information about a much more egregious and intentional violation of the Presidential Records Act by Joe Biden, and perhaps even having documents that relate to Ukraine, of all places. That's pretty scary stuff. Now, I'm not saying anybody should be criminally prosecuted if you're a president or a vice president for having some of these documents in your possession or having people transport them to your home.
Let me ask you this. There's some reports that some classified documents were found on a laptop. They turned over a thumb drive. Can you guarantee that no copies of these classified documents still remain at Mar-a-Lago? Do you know this for a fact that right now there are no more classified documents at Mar-a-Lago?
Yeah, sure. And I can tell you the leak about what happened with this additional documents or several documents that were found in the thumb drive is absurd. We actually have a federal prosecutor that was in court that completely mischaracterized that. It's been the same mischaracterization that the media has run with to suggest that President Trump is just sitting on a mountain of documents. It's not true at all. It was a completely innocuous situation, 4,500 pages of documents with several mixed in that didn't stand out to a low-level staffer, period.
Now seems like a good time to remind you that some of the documents that were taken were classified for SCIF-only reading. Those are the SCI documents. In other words, documents that if they left a SCIF, need their own separate investigation to figure out how they got out of the SCIF without being signed out. Because they're not supposed to be able to even leave the SCIF when you are working with them. They live in there forever. Them's the rules. Just thought I'd remind you, as this guy says, 4,500 pages of documents were being combed through. Wild.
We found out that she had it. Yeah. We said, did you ever make copies of this? Did it ever go anywhere? And we chased down the chain of custody in a professional manner and immediately turned that over to the FBI and DOJ. They try to run with that as obstruction. It's the exact opposite.
Do you know for sure whether the former president got involved with the unpacking and moving of the boxes or not?
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? Does anybody in their right mind really think that Donald Trump came down to Mar-a-Lago while still president, I guess, in January, and said, hey, these are the boxes I packed. Let's be careful with those. That goes in the dining room. That goes in the closet.
He told Hannity he could.
Yes. To answer that guy's question, yes. Does anybody in America really think that Trump did that with the documents? I do, right here. I do. So as an American, what I would like to happen just so that we don't, throw a guy in prison over just my opinion. What I'd like to happen is there to be an investigation, an indictment, and then a trial wherein we look at whether or not he did that. And then what I would like to have happen is to have a jury of Trump's peers, which would be mine as well, because, again, I can't stress, he is just some guy. What I would like to have happen is for a jury then to decide whether or not he did this thing. That's what I would like to have happen. You miserable.
No, he is not denying any of this.
He said, I would have the right to. He didn't pack the boxes. Come on. I mean, that's like absurd to think that President Trump, in the middle of January of 2021...
He didn't say, I want to keep certain documents. You don't think he did that?
If you look at the boxes, as I have...
You make this to seem like it's hard to believe to anybody that has covered or spent time with the former president. I know you're new to him. This is who he is.
So
thank you, Chuck Todd, for reminding people again of the reality and that they have two eyes for the most part, and 2 ears for the most part, and one whole entire brain for the most part. I mean, that bit of bringing us back to reality is important. Chuck Todd saying, like, wait a minute, you're acting like this is crazy. This is very much something Trump would do. This dude has shown no respect for America, Americans, or the laws we have to live by. Yes, this is something Trump would do, and yes, it is a reasonable conclusion to draw for any American that he stole intentionally our documents and intentionally withheld them from our government. In other words, withheld them from us. Stolen from us, withheld them from us. Yes, that is a reasonable assumption to make and should be hashed out in a court of law. And while this clown is correct, actually, not Chuck Todd, but the other clown, while the other clown is correct, that Trump didn't actually say that's what he did. He did communicate rather strongly what his defense was going to be in that Hannity interview, which is that he had the right to do the thing that Hannity was trying to get him to say he didn't do. Why did Trump so vehemently say what he said about that? Because that's what he's going to argue in court. That's why.
You're going to vouch for him packing the boxes.
I'm just asking, the idea that he wouldn't do this, he himself just said it.
Chuck, you listen to what he said. This is the third time I've had to correct you. It's, I would have the right. That's what he said to Hannity.
If he didn't do it, he'd say he didn't do it.
No, Chuck. He's making the point that it's not illegal for a president to possess documents like this. But the bottom line is, I'll make it clear to you, since you seem to be struggling with it, President Trump didn't sit there with masking tape and Sharpies and say, hey, let's sit down Indian style and start packing these boxes and send them tomorrow.
I don't think anybody's alleged he was sitting Indian style. I'll give you that.
Well,
let me ask you this.
Let
me ask you this. But the former president is called Jack Smith a lunatic?
Let's just, before we move on, more to the point there. Point is, Trump was responsible for them. Who had responsibility for those documents? The dude that took them. Do we have a larger problem with officials hanging on to documents that they shouldn't hang on to? Sure we do. But the question is, did Trump return the documents when asked? No, he didn't. Did he try to hide the documents from people that were coming to get them? Well, it looks like he did. Now the lawyer is trying to claim, well, Trump didn't know what he still had. That's essentially what his argument is coming down to. Trump didn't know what he still had. I'll tell you, I think the answer to that is going to be demonstrated in a court, and I can't wait for it.
A fully weaponized monster, a political hitman. You worked with Jack Smith at the Justice Department for quite a few years. Is that the Jack Smith you know?
Well, here's the point. I would say two things. One is the president has every right to be frustrated by being politically targeted. I mean, we are crossing a Rubicon where prosecutors can announce, and this is the New York case specifically, and Georgia, hey, I'm going to run for office on the idea of taking down Donald Trump. That is flipping the whole idea. I mean, I was a prosecutor for 27 years. They are supposed to be...
Jack Smith, I'm not talking about...
Well, let me finish. I'll get to Jack. I'm getting to Jack.
Okay.
It is... you are supposed to be judicious. You're supposed to pursue the evidence where it takes you. You're to use your discretion as a prosecutor to do what's right. When you have people saying, I'm the best guy to get him, to go on networks and target him, that is a different model. That is something that makes it very easy to represent this president, because that is a change in the whole nation's fabric. He is very aware of that. You know, when he talks about it, he immediately gets into, this is a devastating development for our country, and he's right. Now, on the Jack Smith side, here's what I'll say. We have seen DOJ overreach from day one. I mean, I've already talked about the criminalizing of something that's civil, but I'm talking about dragging assistant landscapers, maids, telling people, you better give me the password to this laptop or you'll be in D.C. for grand jury in 2 days. I mean, they have overreached every step of the way. And
here's a quick counterpoint that I'm pretty sure Todd does not make. Why are they talking to these people? Why are they talking to the landscaper who somehow has the password to the password to a laptop that the government needs to get in to retrieve classified documents? Guy's complaining that, Trump's landscaper got called in. How ridiculous is that? Bit of an own goal there, fella. Because why does the government's investigation need to encompass this dude? Could it be that the landscaper could have accessed these documents? Were they that poorly stored? And this guy wants to know, why is everybody going after Trump? Well, it'd be things like that. It might be. It might just, crazy thought, but it might be that Trump is not a good custodian of the people's records. That's a reason why. You clown.
And, you know, I'm not saying it's all Jack Smith. All roads lead to the Attorney General. The Attorney General, 4 days after the raid at Mar-a-Lago, did something no prosecutor I've ever seen does, which is stand up to a press conference and say, hey, we got a permission slip from a judge and we found some stuff. You
stand by the comments he's made about Jack Smith?
Wait a minute. Don't go back to, all right, maybe go back to the Jack Smith thing to hold this increasingly nervous looking man to it. Why did Merrick Garland give that press conference? Well, that would be because Trump announced that he was raided. And yeah, Trump did get raided because he refused to give back the documents. And by the way, during that raid, they recovered a lot of documents that Trump refused to give back to us. They were our documents, not his. So this guy just said, all roads lead to Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland, 4 days after the raid, did something that no attorney general has ever done. Yeah, he reacted to something no former president has ever done. Inherently dishonest.
Calling him a monster.
I'm telling you, there's reason to be frustrated, and there's an unethical nature of this prosecution when the Attorney General holds a press conference that not even a local DA in Butte would do because they know it's against the ethics.
You're going to get no notes if you call him on this.
So you stand by the president politicizing these attacks on Jack Smith?
No, look, the president he's a very resilient guy. He is a very opinionated guy. I'm not going to spend my time worrying about the politics, worrying about how his poll numbers are through the roof. I mean, I don't care about that stuff. I'm here in the legal lane, and he's got a right to be frustrated, but he's not just frustrated for himself. He's frustrated for the country.
All right, James Trusty, the attorney for the former president. I appreciate you coming on
and
expressing the president's views.
Chuck Todd was close to being in the No Notes Club for the first time ever on WYCD Wicked. Oh boy, he was close. Didn't quite get there. Really would have liked him to mention that little fact about the Merrick Garland press conference.